Hello, my friends, and welcome back. It's very strange to me when I uh, look at the, the Western mass media in general, and I know it's not good to generalize issues, but after a while you get to find a pattern in everything that you observe. In this case, is the corporate mass media and the governments. In this case, the Western governments. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the hypocrisy of being showing indignation when someone is doing something that you did previously to that someone. So let's say I call you names, I start calling you names continuously, repeatedly. And then at one point you mildly call me out and say, "Hey, Emil, you're kind of like a rude guy. You call me names." And I'm like, that's impossible. How can you say something like this? I mean, look, you're rude. Look at you. So I didn't even call you, a name. I just said you want to say it rude, which is a statement that is based on the evidence that you provided with your past behavior. In this case, repeatedly insulting or calling another person names. So let's go to our issue here. We all remember how president of the United States of America called the president of another country, Russian Federation. His name is President Vladimir Putin, of course. He agreed that, and he said it, that Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, that he's a criminal, and repeatedly. And many other words were used by not only the U.S. president yesterday or the day before. I think it was not yesterday. Uh, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He spoke about talking with Putin, and he said he's talking with Putin. It's like talking to a crocodile who's got your one of your limbs or something. Well, it's an analogy. That's okay with that. But I've never heard, for instance, President Vladimir Putin saying anything of the same kind or remotely close to any of this kind of insults. I don't have to go further than that because there are other people who call Vladimir Putin a war criminal and so on. But some people can argue, well, he is. And I would ask how? How? To be a war criminal, that should be determined by a court of law, or at least an investigation conducted, a impartial, that's the keyword, impartial investigation conducted. And then if he is found that that there were war crimes committed, if those war crimes were committed by the Russian army, and if the president of Russia was aware of those crimes and did not do anything about it, or even more, if he ordered those, then you can claim he's a war criminal. Otherwise, each and every crime that a little unit in a war commits in a remote area somewhere could be just directly sent, and the leader of the country immediately is decapitated or something. Because if that would be the level, and it would be the standard we uphold and we use, then we can look at many other leaders who fall into the category of war criminals, where the army committed some war crimes, but those people are not called, some of them, they're not called war criminals. On the contrary, they're called heroes and so on. So if you use this logic here that a crime was committed by an army, but you can make a link between that and the leader somehow. That's from what I read. Okay, it's not I was born with this knowledge. When I read about it, that's when you can claim that could be considered a war criminal if it's an officer, if it's a superior, in this case, the head of state. So let's go to, remember, the people that I mentioned were officials, politicians, leaders. Now I'm going to mention how I'm going to discuss a case where the United States officials get upset that someone said something about something. So it says here it comes from the Newsweek from today, from yesterday actually, which is was the 22nd of April 2022, and this is the title: Russian TV panel discussing nuclear strike on U.S. reckless, says the Pentagon. So the Pentagon is upset that some guys on a TV, while they were talking to one another, made a joke and they were discussing something about New York. I will tell you exactly what it was. It was not inciting, it was not calling for it. It was like we are on a panel. I say, hey, yeah, how about this? Hey, how would that be good? I don't know, but yeah, that's kind of how it occurred. And the Pentagon and the officials, American officials, also, it's reckless. It's unacceptable. Is that more acceptable than coming in front of a TV camera as a president or a vice president or a chancellor or whomever and prime minister and make claims that are not yet proven to be true? So let me read what's happened here. So Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby, from what I listened to, this guy is how can you tell he's lying? He's opening his mouth. That's how you know. Not in this case, I don't know. He's just upset right now. So that was a joke, YouTube. So Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby responded to a Russian state-run TV panel discussing a nuclear strike on the US, calling it reckless. Well, it's discussing. Let's see if they were discussing it. Like, hey, what are we going to do? Are we going to do this? Maybe it's better like this. Maybe we do it in the middle of the night when they're all sleeping or they're all doing something else. All right. So while appearing on MSNBC's Morning Joe blah, blah, blah on Friday, Kirby said, this is reckless and irresponsible rhetoric coming from a nuclear power. It's not it comes from a panel of guys who talk on the set. It's not a military official. It's not a politician. It's not a leader. So what are you talking, Kirby? Yeah, but they're ruffled up immediately. Oh my God, they said something about us. And we're here very, very angel-like. So it says, especially one that has nuclear arsenal. Mr. Vladimir Putin does and has available to him, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now let's see the comments by Kirby came just a few days after a panel of Russian analysts on a state-run TV channel, Russia 1, spoke about Russian military test firing a nuclear-capable missile and how it could damage areas in the US, such as New York. That's it. So let's say, okay, that could damage that. Okay. Is that, what's the title? That discussing a nuclear strike. Why you can't talk about certain things? Do you promote it with an analogy? Let's go further because we got more. So it says here, meanwhile on Russian state TV, hosts and panelists giggling uncontrollably, while discussing, they say, continue discussing nuclear strikes against the continental territory of the United States. And now he says, can you imagine any of our prominent media anchors laughing at the idea of destroying cities? And not only anchors. So daily guy here, I don't say that, is just, let's go and see what this guy said. So he says, in the clip shared by Davis, one of the panelists discusses the test launch of the Sarmat missile and asked, what kind of objects can it destroy? What size and territory? Because the Sarmat is the last tested nuclear weapon that the Russians claim that no defense systems can get it. So imagine Russia, and I'm not making any excuses for Russia, okay? It's just putting in a context a little bit here. Russia is at war, however you want to call it, of its own choosing, whatever you want to call it, against one country. And behind that country right now is like more than 20 who support militarily, blah, 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 this country. So not only militarily, financially, economically, politically, trying to do embargoes, just trying to strangle Russia, okay? So how should Russia see the guys behind these guys? As enemies, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? No, the friends who support my enemies become my enemies. It's, I mean, you should be retarded not to think that way. That means you're gonna lose each and every fight you're gonna engage in, initiated by you or by anybody else. So then you could see the United States as an aggressor. And they definitely do see the United States as an aggressor who pushes Zelensky and Ukraine to defend their country. Let's put it nicely. So this is so they think, okay, now we got a bomb that is the best, and we can, if those guys we get cornered, we can do it and we can flatten those guys out, so they will not dare to push it too far. That could be a good context. I think that's the context, the whole thing. I mean, what kind of object can destroy what size of territory? I think that's a technical question, not a political question. But you can take it however you want, because I would say, okay, it got megatons or whatever. The explosion could kill is like 3 times than the Tsar bomb from 1960 something or whatever, and then that could destroy or 50 times or 100 times stronger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which destroyed one town. This would destroy 50 towns or something like that. So they can imagine what would be the destruction. I would take it that way, but maybe they didn't. So it says here, another panelist then responded by saying, objects like the city of New York, a good city, but it would be gone, according to the English translation of the video. So why, I don't know why they put it according to an English translation of the video. Maybe it's a different one, but nevertheless, he said, objects like the city of New York, a good city, but it would be gone. So he says objects like the city of New York, which shows the size. If they would have said, let's say Moscow, would it be like what? Considered terrorists or something because they want to bomb their own country or something? And then a good city. Now a good city to bomb, a good city in itself, and it says, but it would be gone. So that means he gave an analogy of this. He didn't say, yeah, let's, you could interpret it if you're a little bit like different, but he said he gave an analogy. New York City, what if he would have said Paris, the same thing? Or this was his meta. So nevertheless, according to New York Times, shortly after the Sarmat missile test launch, Russian President Vladimir Putin said, this truly unique weapon will force all who are trying to threaten our country in the head of frenzied, aggressive rhetoric to think twice. So basically said, back off, you, and that's it. So in that context, I don't see why, why this would be, I mean, I see how people could see it that way, but I think, whenever someone makes a statement, you look to the most obvious interpretation, based on the context, the words, and the facial expression, the body language. Was it a joke? Was it giggling? Was it not giggling? What was it? And you get the option, or with the highest probability, and then you go to the second one, and then you go to the third one, and these guys seem to me like they go to the fifth one, because there would be 5 other interpretations more likely to occur. It's not like you go to a let's say to go to a bank to withdraw some money, and you say, hey, how are you? How many people are? Oh, you guys are happy. How many people are you here? And the guy, oh, 911, we got someone who wants to rob a bank. I say, what? Why? Well, you ask how many, so that means you want to know how you can go and how can you, do this and do that. Could be easily interpreted like that, but is not. Why? Because the person, the clerk, will think, is that possible? Is this what he meant? Is he has anything on him? Anything? He's really who's around. So you see, the same thing with here. You could interpret it that way. My point is that this was a panel giggling, and you have here at let's say that Joyce Reid, who talks about systemic racism and about evil certain groups and all that all day long. You can say, well, it's not the same thing. Well, I think it poisons the U.S. society and creates a lot of tensions, unnecessary, that they are not there. And then there are some tensions, don't get me wrong, but some anchors are just exacerbating them. And the same with Putin, with Trump, with this, were they responsible? And there were anchors talking about that seriously. This should be arrested, that should be in jail, that should be this and this. And these guys are just talking about, give me a size. What would be size? The size would be like, for instance, that town. But you can touch them with a flower because they're very sensitive, but they are the strongest, and So that tells me something. That tells me, for instance, that they are insecure, and dissent is not permitted. Free speech is not permitted. It was not a threat, and even if it was, let's say, a threat, it was made by a guy or a girl or whatever in a studio being asked a question by some people. Really, it was not like, oh, I would like to do this. Yeah, that we should do that. Yeah, they deserve it, or nothing like that. And it was not an official. But look, on the other side, officials, military, politicians, and anchors use more dangerous rhetoric, I would say, than this thing. Well, you judge for yourselves. Maybe you can find a clip and with translation and see how it occurred. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just. See ya.